Alrighty, gang. Here's to nights that turn into mornings and friends that turn into family. Cheers!
Happy birthday to you.
Hello. Welcome to the Friendship IRL podcast. I'm your host, Alex Alexander, and each week we explore what's working and what's not in our friendships, community, and connections. Have you ever wished you could sit down and have a conversation about what is really going on in your friendships? Well, you found your people. Join us as we dive into real-life stories and explore new ways to approach these connections. Together, we're reimagining the rules of friendship. One of my favorite pastimes is bragging about a friend. When's the last time you bragged about a friend? Just seriously, think about it. If you're having a bad day, bragging about someone you love or care about will turn your whole day around. Just really getting in there with why they're so great, why the thing they did is so amazing. Give it a try the next time you're having a bad day. And today, I get to brag to you all about my new friend, Anna Goldfarb. Anna is the author of Modern Friendships. And when this episode is out, when you are listening to this, you can go right now to the show notes and purchase her book. We're dropping this episode on launch week. I am holding a physical copy of the book in my hands. Anna sent it to me before it's released. I have read the entire thing, and I can tell you right now, you need it on your bookshelf. So go buy it, go borrow it, go tell your book club friends that it's the next pick for the book club. Let me tell you a little bit about Anna. Anna Goldfarb is a journalist whose reporting has appeared in the New York Times, The Atlantic, Washington Post, Vox, Vice, and more. Her forthcoming book, Modern Friendship, which is out now, explores the nuances of navigating adult friendships. I am beyond grateful that Anna reached out to me about coming on the podcast to talk about her book. As you're going to find, we have lots of overlap in the ways we think about friendship, but of course, we are all different people. She provides slightly different perspectives and language. I think that she is such a fantastic resource for all of you. If you are here, if you like the ways that I talk about friendship, but maybe certain concepts aren't landing quite right, go give Anna a follow. Go sign up for her newsletter. Go buy her book. Because I think she might be a great place for you to find something that just aligns a little bit more with you. You can hang out with both of us. Today's episode is all about her book, the concepts in it, some of the overlap we have, and I just am really excited for you to hear this, if I haven't made that evident. This was such a delightful conversation for me and Anna. We ended the episode, her and I, being like, we could talk forever. So my ask for you, when you get to the end of this episode, you've checked out her work, you've read her book, if you want to shoot me a message with some of the things you think Anna and I should talk about, I'll invite her back on the podcast. What should her and I spin on for a bit? Let me know. With that, let's get to today's episode. Anna, I'm so excited that you're here today, and we're doing exciting things. We're talking about your new book.
We're talking about my new book. I'm beyond excited. There needs to be a better word than excited. Like, I'm just elated. I can't believe it's here. And it just feels wonderful.
Have you cried about I'm sure you've cried about the book because I'm writing a book too. Have you held the book yet? Have you had that moment?
I thought it came yesterday and I got so excited. I was like, do I have to post something on social media of me opening a cardboard box? But it was actually just a box to send my husband's old computer back to Apple Store. It wasn't actually the box of books. It was a dry run. I got so excited with the big box. So I think that shows my mental state, but it's starting to feel real. I haven't held it in my hands though. Mm-hmm. I imagine that will feel indescribable.
I mean, after writing mine for so long and it just feels like it's this thing that exists in a Word document, recently I've really had to sit and think this is going to be on a bookshelf. This is going to be on people's bookshelves. This is going to be like in a library. You could search my name. There's so many wild things about that physical book. I haven't had that experience yet, but I'm excited for you to have it. You'll have it before I do.
I can't wait for it to be ignored on a shelf even. Like even that's going to be cool. Walk past it, pick it up, put it down. I don't care. I'm just excited to be on the table.
Yeah, I get that. I get that. So let's talk a little bit because I think, well, I have a question. As somebody who works in this friendship space, you have been writing about friendship since 2017. You're saying your first article in the New York Times was published in 2017. And I feel like friendship has really had a surge in popularity as a topic in the past few years. What was it like writing about friendship before it was such a hot topic?
I don't know if it's confirmation bias that now we are attuned to friendship, so we notice it more.
Mm-hmm.
I first wrote about managing our friendships in 2017 in the New York Times. And that was when I first learned that there are friendship experts. I didn't even know that that was something someone could be. That blew my mind. I'm like, wait, so that's your job? You like think about friendship and talk and write about friendship? And that expert was Shasta Nelson, who is wonderful, lovely, phenomenal. And
I know Shasta.
She really kicked open doors in my brain of, wow, this is a field. There's a lot going on, but it's under the radar.
Mm-hmm.
It makes perfect sense that with the pandemic, when all of our friendships were shuffled at the exact same time, which is historically new and just exploded an appetite for content of the pandemic accelerated these trends that were already happening of disconnection, loneliness. I'd heard about that, but I usually think of old people. I mean, they kind of make it seem like an older person in the nursing home who has no visitors kind of thing. It wasn't something that I connected to. That wasn't part of my story. My story was more, I have all these friends I've collected and I don't know how to regard them. Like I have this collection of Funko figurines, you know, that seemed like a good idea to get a bunch of them. And well, what do you do with them? You know, social media exacerbates that message of here are all your friends at once. And it's just a fire hose stream of all of your contacts, all given pretty much equal weight. Like the person you haven't seen in 7 years is right next to your book club friends. So that was further confusing me of, you know, who are my actual friends? It feels like I have none, but this app is telling me I have dozens. So what's the disconnect here?
Yeah. I've never thought about how they all sit together on the feed and how it really like flattens everything. That is such an interesting, my mind is going to go on a whole little rabbit hole about that on probably a walk sometime this week.
Yeah, it's so confusing. There's no hierarchy. Like you have to manually create a hierarchy. And then with algorithms changing, it just further exacerbated this disconnect of I'm not seeing my closest friends' content who I want to see, but I'm seeing like, you know, the guy I worked with 12 years ago. I know his baby's middle names. Like, what is happening?
Yeah.
Like, this isn't the life I imagined for myself.
Yeah. And then you add in the fact that so many of our friends have, you know, moved all over the country or in different life scenarios, different seasons, and they're not in front of you all the time. They're just, I mean, for a lot of people, right, they're hidden behind the contacts button on their phone, a couple layers deep. How often are you getting in there? And then again, it's just another flat list mixed in with that guy you bought a bookshelf from whose number is saved Robbie Bookshelf. In your phone.
You're like, Robbie Bookshelf. Wow, it's his 3rd anniversary at work. Great for you, Robbie Bookshelf. Like, but I wish I knew different information. I don't like the information I'm learning on this app. Let's do something more relevant to me.
Well, it sounds like you and I had a very similar situation, which is just that you get to this place in life where you decide that these friendships matter and you're looking at them and you're like, how are we doing this? Why are we doing this? What are we doing here? These matter to me. I want to do something, but like, what am I even doing? And it takes people, if I do say so myself, it takes people like you and I talking about it, writing books about it, things like that. We're putting these conversations out there for other people to start their own conversations.
Yeah. And it was important for me to give a language to these tiers of friendship.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that's part of the problem is, we just have one word for friends, best friends, close friends, but I'm trying to get a new language going on here so that you can better understand the expectations, get some clarity. Like, we need clarity. Give us clarity, please.
Yeah.
So it really matters.
I would agree. Language is a huge issue. Friend and not friend and maybe acquaintance isn't enough to cover all these connections we have in our lives.
No,
Man,
it's outdated. It's
Anna,
totally outdated.
we have talked about this already, how aligned you and I are, but wow. Because that was my thing too, is we don't have any language to talk about this. So if we want to start a conversation, what are we even talking about? Man, okay.
Yeah.
We're meant to be here together today, you and I. Why don't we start off for everybody here? We've mentioned there's a book coming, Modern Friendship, How to Nurture Our Most Valued Connections. It is out June 4th, which is 2 days before this podcast episode releases. So when you are listening to this episode, the book is available. We will link it in the show notes. We will link it all the places so you can go buy it. I have read it. For anybody who's listening, Anna sent me a e-galley, a pre-release copy. I have read the whole thing and I loved it. It was such a good book.
Thank you.
There are so
I'm
many
beaming.
actionable tips in there. And there are so many, the languages in there, new ways of thinking are in there, reflection exercises are in there. I was inspired by your book.
That's so cool. That's so cool. What a dream.
Why don't we start out by, can you just talk about a little bit what is modern friendship? How did you end up naming your book that and focusing on this?
I knew I wanted to do a book about our intimate relationships. And I've been reporting on friendships, different nuances of friendships. The pandemic really accelerated the opportunities I had to write about friendship. And when I thought about this book, I actually was reading Big Friendship, which is one of my favorite books about friendship of all time. And a lot of the conflict that the authors were having, I wanted to raise my hand and be like, wait, I know what could help. I know what's going on here. I know it makes perfect sense that you guys are having conflict. I wanted to interject an annoying kid at dinner or something wait, I know what's going on. I can help. And that set me on the path to, let me write a book for those people with these friendships that are really precarious. They're very ambiguous. They're facing historically unprecedented challenges. And when I thought of a title, it was what can encompass, real talk, it was my agent who's how about modern friendship? So I don't want to take credit for it.
It's okay. My team named my book too. Yeah.
Yeah. She saw the thread and I'm there's no way that's available. That's just that'd be too perfect. And it was available. I couldn't believe it. Yeah. The stars aligned. So I'm great, modern friendship. And that really gets to the heart of the questions I was asking of why does this feel so hard? And I'd look at my mom's friendships, my grandma's friendships, and they just look so wildly different. And once you start poking around and looking at studies, you're oh, this isn't just me. This is our society. Our society has changed. We live in a hyper fluid society. We can just drop identities. We can move around. We have so much unlimited choice in who to align with. And there's some pros to that, but there's also some cons. And once you kind of wrap your head around it, you're of course I would have no idea how to regard these friendships I've made. We meet people who have so much in common with us and they have such specific, deep interests as us, and then we're blasted apart.
Yeah.
Of course it's going to hurt. Of course there's going to be pain. You meet these incredible people in your college years, and then you're just blasted apart, and it's so painful. So I wanted to look into that pain and be is that pain inevitable? I just started asking questions well, how do I know if I'm picking good friends? Is there a way to know? How do I know what people want to be my friends? I don't know if I'm picking good people. I keep having problems with friends. Is my picker off? So those were the kinds of questions I was asking. And that's what directed the book of oh, here's what's going on. here's what friendships require. Oh, here's how you talk to a friend. And it just all clicked for me.
I think that your book, if that is your goal, you succeeded. As somebody who has read your book, it really is comprehensive. As somebody who feels, do you feel this way? So I look at my book sometimes and I'm like, it is so much information. I almost feel bad. Like I could have written probably 6 books that were, we've all bought a book where it's one idea and they've just somehow blown it out to be 150, 200 pages, but you really only needed to read 20. I didn't do that, guys. My book is here's the 20 pages you needed. And then, here's another 20 pages and another 20 pages and another 20 pages. And your book is kind of the same. It's like, it's a lot in a good way. It really gives people, like if you read this entire book and you start putting it into practice, it's going to change people's lives.
It changed my life. When I started writing the book, I was estranged from one of my sisters. We were not getting along. And I learned everything I was learning reporting about friendship, I applied to my relationship with my sister. I talk to her every morning. She calls me every morning. I see her every Sunday. Like we have transformed our relationship. This was someone we couldn't even sit through a meal together without, having like hostility and aggression. And now we seek each other out every single day. And that's because I just learned how to orient myself towards other people in a mature, loving, non-judgmental way. And it just opened up all these relationships for me. It's been transformational. It really has.
Wow. I mean, that's a story. That's a testament to your book all on its own.
Like I'm pretty low-key selfish and like it helped me. So that's why I'm so elated at the strategies, because I'm like, it makes perfect sense. The strategies we were using are outdated. And they put people in awkward positions where they can't commit and they don't know where they stand. And it's like, no, we need new strategies so people know that they're important to us. We need to be explicit with that. And then you need to act accordingly. And I really just try to lay out all the tools. And I refuse to suggest something that I wouldn't personally do, given that I'm a, middle-aged cat mom who plays video games. Like I'm not the most go-getter person, but I can make this work for me. And I've never had better friendships. I've never had calmer friendships. I've never had more secure friendships. All the time I used to wonder, like, am I a bad friend? Just guilt, just constant guilt, like a backpack. Like all of it's been just resolved. I don't feel that anymore. I know exactly who belongs in my life and why. And I just feel at peace. So that's what I can promise with this book is if you can relate to any of that, and if you're looking for just peace around this topic, and I just want to feel peace when I think of my friends, like this is the way to go.
It will give people that. For anybody who's listening, it will give you that.
It's a big promise too. Like I don't say that lightly, but it really has worked for me.
I talk so much in friendship, like what is enough? And I do think your book does a great job of answering that question of like, not even answering it, but guiding the reader to being able to determine for themselves what they feel like is enough so they can stop thinking that they're a bad friend and they can put down that backpack. So much of it is just spending the time doing that self-reflection and putting in these small actions to let yourself off the hook. You could read this book and you could do some of this work, or you could spend the next 40 years of your life carrying around that backpack.
Yeah, I was just sick of the backpack, honestly. I was like, I'm really sick of feeling like I don't know what I'm supposed to be doing. I felt like I wasn't even set up to succeed because I didn't know what the game was that I was playing. And I would be texting people that I loved and I wouldn't hear back. And then I would just spiral into self-doubt. Like, does our friendship even matter? Does she even care about me? And I just was sick of having thoughts like that.
Yeah.
I really was just sick of it. Like, I don't have any more information than I did before I texted her. And I just feel so much worse. Like, what's happening? So yeah, I just wanted to take control. I really wanted to take control. My friendships felt like stallions, just wild horses. I couldn't control them. I felt like I was hanging on for dear life. I just had my birthday last month, and it was the first birthday where I finally felt enough. I heard from all of my friends. I call it the jacuzzi tier, the 3 to 5, like your close besties.
Mm-hmm.
And I heard from everyone in my jacuzzi tier before 10 a.m. on my birthday. And I just felt like
Aw.
enough. I was like, I am so filled with love and peace. And I sound like a hippie, and I'm not a hippie, I swear. But I just felt like I know who belongs in my life and why. And it finally feels like enough. And the last time I felt like it was enough was probably high school. And I realized it's because we would focus on a few friends then. We didn't
Mhm.
have this like ginormous network of varying degrees of connection that we're juggling. I had no network at 15, like a negative network. But I had like a few friends that I really loved, and we spent a lot of time together. We talked about things I really cared about, which was punk rock. And I just felt like I was part of a crew. I loved it. And I realized that's when we knew that. We all know this, but we forget it because we have so many new people come in and out. We become so many things to so many more people. We become spouses, employees. Like there's all these new relationships to manage, but it's really about getting back to basics and just choosing a few wonderful people that you share values with and you share commonalities with and passions with, and just being like, I'm just going to focus on you guys. Like, this is the way. I'm just going to go back. I'm just going to focus on a few amazing people. And I just feel like it's not a message we hear very often. We hear more and more and more. I want more. I want more. And to be like, no, I have enough. And I just
Mhm.
need to be really wonderful to these select few people. And that's the way forward.
Yeah, when I listen to you talk about that, it brings me back to our conversation about like everything being flattened, right? And I think something you and I fully agree on is like that lack of language when somebody says like, oh, they're my friend. Well, actually, I'll use best friend. Somebody will tell me like, that's my best friend. And my question is always like, okay, great, that's a better tier, but like best friend for what? And how many best friends do you have? And then you have your friends, and like, how many of those do you have? And then there's this cliff where it's like, oh, acquaintance. Like, ooh, oh gosh. And I think they all have value, but I think you're right. So many people get tripped up because it's like, well, they're my friend and 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 they're my friend. And like, we haven't spent any time thinking about who these people really are to us, which ones we actually go to for what, who we are closest to. And when you do that, you're right, you can release that backpack of feeling like you have to keep up in the same way with 100 people.
Yeah, it's
not sustainable.
It's not sustainable. I just had to make a choice.
Mm-hmm.
I think the happiness comes when you make a choice.
Mm-hmm.
When you don't make a choice and you're trying to keep all these plates in the air, then I just felt constantly let down and like I was letting people down.
Mm-hmm.
It just wasn't fun. I wasn't having a good time. I'm like, this is supposed to be fun. Like, where's the fun? And I wanted to look into it. Like, why doesn't this feel fun?
Yeah. And then we end up here with a whole book.
And then we end up here.
I felt when I read it that there was this overwhelming theme of modern friendship that I think a lot of people are going to identify with. And the word I came up with was overwhelm. And I went through your book and I listed out some of the areas that I feel like we are overwhelmed in. So I have written down expectations, technology, time, and information. And then I kind of have a bonus one. I think this falls into overwhelm, but I wrote uncertainty. Because we have so many options, there's so much uncertainty. And I was just like thinking maybe we could talk through a couple of these and like how they're overwhelming, because I don't even know if most people have considered how overwhelming some of these are. They're just saying, right, like friendship is hard. Like, why is it hard? Which is, why you wrote a whole book about it. So if we were going to talk about like how expectations are overwhelming, what's kind of like a good highlight of that, summary of that? I know we could do 4 episodes just on expectations, but
yeah, like I think our expectations are overwhelming if they're rigid. If you have rigid expectations for your friends, you're going to have a really tough time. If you think I need to hear from my 10 friends on my birthday, which I've done, I did that. I've done this in my 30s. Like, I need to hear from my network on my birthday. If I don't hear from my friend, we're going to fight. Something's wrong. Like, just looking at friendships as all or nothing. Like, it's almost to be dominated and tamed. Like, you have to pay fealty to me. Like, I'm having a party. You're expected to come. I have a big event. You need to be here, with no nuance or understanding well, I understand if you can't make it, but maybe we could do something else that fits more with your friend's life. I think expectations really bit me in the butt because I knew my expectations weren't helping my friendships feel closer or more fun. It just left me feeling exasperated and taken for granted. So I'm like, okay, what's up with expectations here? And I learned that there's rigid expectations, like I said, and there's flexible expectations. And friends really love it when you have flexible expectations of do your best. Like, let's try and make it happen. No hard feelings. I know that you're trying your best. I know that I love you. And our friendships are going to look different now than they did 5 years ago. They're going to look different. We're different. And having an attitude like that, that's more flexible, people will enjoy being your friend more. If you give that flexibility, if you model that to them, they're going to want to keep you around more, is what I learned. Just to appreciate what friends can do today.
I don't think I've ever used this backpack analogy before, but I kind of like it. So that might appear again. I've talked a lot about setting down your shoulds and to stop shoulding on yourself. But like, maybe we're just going to start talking about a backpack, your backpack of shoulds. I really like this analogy, so expect it to appear again. I did want to pop in and tell you that if you want to go listen to some other podcast episodes that have to do with more fluid expectations in your friendships, I mean, that is definitely a theme in so many of these episodes. But if you want like some specific episodes, I would suggest going and listening to episode 33 with NChem. It's titled The New Version of Friendship. It's Not All or Nothing. And then another great episode would be episode 45, which is a solo episode. And it's about friendship demotions. And I know you're like, what does that mean? Why is that related to flexible expectations? That doesn't sound good. But really, that episode is about how when we have these really big, rigid expectations, it's really hard for our friendships to live up to that standard. And instead, if we can get more specific about the ways that we show up for people and they show up for us, then the things that we quote unquote should do in that friendship, there are fewer of them. There's less in our backpack, and it creates more space for the other pieces to be fluid in our friendship. Head on over and give those 2 episodes a listen if you want to dive deeper into expectations. When I listened to you talk about that, what came to mind was that, I mean, we're already talking about like the backpack we're carrying, right? So many of us want to be good friends, or we want to be successful at friendship. And when you have those rigid expectations, like it's a very narrow path to success or to being a good friend. But when it's flexible, there's more options, there's more ways. It's like the path splits. And if you can nail one of them, you've met expectations. I've never had that visual before, but I think that's like such a beautiful way to think about this for maybe anybody who feels maybe they're struggling with the idea of being more flexible. Like they do have the rigid expectations.
Well, it is scary. It can be scary to be like, our friendship is looking different. It's not what it was. Something's wrong. And I understand where that thought comes from, because change is scary. And there's a lot of change in your 30s. It's like a unbelievable historical amount of change after you turn 25. And, you know, the different life choices we can make are just endless. And they're so new to our society. These lifestyle choices are so new. Not even having children. I chose not to be a parent. that's a new lifestyle choice, like
Yes.
historically speaking. You know, having lots of partners, having ex-boyfriends you're friends with, those are new challenges generationally that a lot of people didn't have. My grandma was married at 18 for 51 years. Like,
Wow.
she wasn't best friends with her ex, with her exes, plural. Like, that wasn't something she ever had to navigate. So there's just a lot of like different, you know, there's more diversity. We're allowed to be friends with people of different genders, different sexuality preferences. And that's all new to figure out how to fit your lives together when you make different lifestyle choices. You know, we seek people out who are in the similar place in life that we are. So if I don't have kids, that might be a schism now where my friends that do have kids, we have to find our footing in a new friendship where our priorities have shifted. When before it's probably you get married, you have kids. Like women, the choices were a lot more limited. So it's just been really interesting thinking about modern friendship, of how those choices, those differing choices impact who we pull close and why. Yeah, there's just more choices to make and more milestones to do. If you go to grad school, you're going to start hanging out with your grad school friends. If my grandma never went to grad school, she didn't go to college.
Yeah.
Like, it's just very different social networks that are pulling on us and giving us opportunities. And we have to find some way to cut through these choices, some way to find a way to move forward and create social networks when the burden has shifted to us. We don't have a magical entity gluing our social connections in place. We have to come up with reasons between us to keep that bond going. That's a new burden. That is historically new burden. That was a big piece of why modern friendships just feel different. I mean, there's so much more pressure on us.
There is, yeah, a lot more personal responsibility to
We
create.
have to look at our own calendars and open it up and find a time and find a reason. It's not like, I'll see you at the synagogue on Saturday for the whatever. It's like,
you're walking down the
no.
main street where you see the same people every day in your tiny little town, and you stop outside for a soda. Yeah. It's not the same anymore.
It's not like that. But if you expect it to be like that, you're going to be at a disadvantage for this new modern friendship landscape.
Yeah. Another place where I felt like there was a lot of overwhelm is one that all of us in the friendship, quote unquote expert, because I know neither of us love to call ourselves experts, expert sphere, who everybody loves to talk about, which is technology and the overwhelm that technology creates. And I feel like you pointed out so many places in this book that reminded us all of the impact of technology. And one in particular that like I've wanted to talk about on an episode somewhere, and you talk about it in your book, is just we live in a day and age where, because of social media, we have been convinced that we need to collect all these people and we follow them, and we don't lose people the way that previous generations did, where if you, let's say your grandma's generation, if she moved across the country, sure, she might have continued to write letters or have a random phone call here and there with a friend who lived on the other side of the country that they moved away from, but she's not staying in touch with 75 people from
indefinitely
from the town that she previously lived in. And we're doing that. It's taking up so much space in our brains that I don't even think people realize.
It's like the DVR that you don't clean out, and then you look and you're like, Salt Lake City. Like, I haven't watched this season's so old. I'm not watching this. I think that social media clearly has had a detrimental effect on our relationships. And the reason is because, in my opinion, it as you said, it flattens all of our connections into this fire hose of information. And it makes us feel like, well, oh, I miss Jenny. Oh, I should give her a call. Oh, there's Lois. I'm trying to think of names, just generic names.
Yeah.
There's Burton. He's off. It's like, oh man, I miss my friends. I'm not near any of them. And it just creates this spiral of, it's not helping. It's not helping anyone connect. And it really blurs your social network into one stream of people that you have various degrees of closeness with. And it just reminds you what you don't have. Like, I'm not close with, oh, I haven't heard from her. I should talk to Susie. Why hasn't Susie reached out to me? Does Susie not care about me? Am I in a fight with Susie? And then you sort of whip yourself up until like, it's just very stressful.
Yeah.
All of it's very stressful and it's mysterious. Like, we don't know. I don't know what my friends' feeds are showing them. I don't know if they're seeing my updates and they care, they don't care. It's just so much uncertainty. And that goes back to the overwhelm of the uncertainty of modern life. If we don't know what people see that we put out into the world, we don't know if they're engaging with it or not. We don't know if they have a judgment on it or not. We don't know. And uncertainty creates anxiety. And these are the most anxious generations of all time. So it's a direct link.
Yeah. I mean, so I wrote down uncertainty, and it has to do with what you're saying is exactly one example. But the overwhelm with the uncertainty, what I was thinking in addition to that was like, nobody can see this on audio, but I'm wearing a Whoop. It's like a Aura ring. It's like a monitor, right? I can see my heart rate and all these things. And it gives me some sense of control and analytics. I can pre-schedule all these things in my life when my groceries are delivered, when this happens. I can set reminders on my phone. Like, we have built so much in our world to feel very certain nowadays in a lot of senses. And I feel like if you really start thinking about friendship, there is so much uncertainty that we almost are like overwhelmed with it because we can't control it the same way we can control other areas of our life. Like, will we be friends? Will that person reject us? Will they move? And this whole 6 months we've been talking is a waste. Will this conversation turn into a fight? Did they see my social media update? Will they call me? And people just kind of shut down, I think.
Yeah. Does this person want to sell me something?
Yeah.
I think friends reach out and you're like, oh, I'm so excited. I would love to come to your house. And it's like, oh, you're selling me an MLM. Like, this is not great.
Yeah.
So I think people are on edge naturally. There's definitely a suspicion in the air of like, why me? Why are you seeking me out? Does anyone care? Oh, you do care, but why? Once I started writing this book, I naturally have gravitated away from social media because I know who my real friends are. And those relationships are not reflected on my social media at all. And I don't need it to. It's just an artifice. Social media is such an artifice. It's not real life. And I think my distaste for it has grown because I've been spending so much energy on my real relationships. I think that'd be like the best takeaway is after you read this book, you're like, you know what? Social media is just, it's not serving me. This isn't real life. I'd rather be with a friend making a joke in real time than like scrolling through, looking at all these dozens of people that don't belong. I don't need to know this much about all these people. It's not a good use of my time.
I mean, we're going to be real honest, right? I mean, some of those people aren't even people you actually know.
Yeah, it's just...
They're just like an influencer that you follow, that you think you know, but you don't know them. If you walk down the street, they don't know who you are.
Yeah, it's 1,000%. And it's like, is this how I want to spend my time?
Yeah, we're giving all of our attention and energy and like social to that person that we're not going to get anything back from.
Yeah.
Oh,
I think we solved it.
Sorry. Sorry.
Everything's overwhelming and just don't engage with it and hold back.
Another place that I felt was overwhelming was time in today's world. I wrote down a quote from the book, which is, most of my friends' time is already spoken for between work commitments, significant others, children, pets, groceries, laundry, workouts. This isn't exact. I've paraphrased it a little bit, Anna, but like, what is left for some good old fashioned FaceTime?
Yeah.
I think so many people are going to read that, are going to hear that. And you're speaking the facts. Because how often are we all wanting to reach out to our friends, but stopping ourselves before we even do because we are convinced they don't even have time?
Oh, yeah. I do that. I've been guilty of that, especially friends with kids. You're like, it's just, I'm not the priority. But you really have to interrogate that voice And you're like, well, what are things I can provide to this friend?
Mm-hmm.
Like I can just be positivity and love, but when I want to choose that.
And I think this goes back actually to what you were saying earlier about having a better understanding of who your closest people are, your jacuzzi friends, right? And then it's harder to talk yourself out when you have such a strong belief. Like this person and I are close. They do want to hear from me. They do want to try to work me in to their schedule today amongst all the other things, because you have that trust that they are one of your people.
Yeah. I also have a disposition of I'm here to help. And I think when people think about friendships, in my opinion, they think, what can my friends do for me? What haven't they done for me? They focus too much on that instead of how can I support these amazing people in my life? How can I help them achieve their dreams and goals? And I want to be a part of it. And then it's a different feeling to reach out. It's like, I want to help. What can I help with?
I'm delighted. You're going to love my book. You're going to love it when I send it to you. Because,
I know they're like spiritual twins, it sounds like.
There's a part of my book where I talk about how so much of friendship is focused on the other person. Like, will they like me? What are they doing for me? Them, like that person. And I agree. Like, all we can control is ourselves. So how am I showing up? What can I give? What do I enjoy? And then do all that. Lean into that. And you can't control what your friend does, but stop focusing so much on them. Focus more on yourself.
Yeah. Yeah. And our society doesn't send that message because it doesn't sell you. Well, they want to sell you, not to sound like a conspiracy person, but they're like, what about you? You should buy this thing to help you. And it's like, no, I want to help other people. And it's a different orientation and it's a different message than our society gives one another of, we sort of regard like, what does this person want from me? It's like, no, how can I help them achieve their dreams and goals? It's meaningful for me to be a part of my friends. I want them to have success.
Yeah.
I want them to feel just enshrouded with love. I want them to have other friends. I think that's awesome. It's really contagious. And when you model to your closest friends, this is what friendship should feel like. It really is transformative because you're showing it's contagious. You show other people. This is how to respect other people's time. You ask for consent before you launch into a rant or event. This is how you show support by saying, introduce me to your other friends. I'd love to meet them. Like, I think this sounds great. We want to be a circle of support for you. It's such a different orientation that we don't see enough.
I agree.
You get it.
Yes. Yeah. I'm just over here nodding so big this whole episode. So something I do think is, well, for me was very interesting about your book is this idea that kind of when you talk about that personal responsibility piece. So I wrote this down from page 45. You felt seen when you found out that we are holding all this stress for our entire social network, because that's exactly what's most likely happening, that like you feel stressed by it. And I found this really interesting because I feel really empowered by it. And I was just wondering if you could talk a little bit more about your perspective, because I don't think it's your feeling. You are obviously allowed to feel however you want to feel, but I just was like, wow, I've never thought about it that way.
Well, I have a lot of friends, but they don't know each other. They only have common history with me, not with each other. So it's stressful in that there's no one to share the reasons to get together, to help plan, to help. There's no outside force helping with it. I moved around a lot. Like I've lived in 3 different cities. My parents don't live where I grew up. I just feel like more and more people have this experience where they have these like long held connections, but nobody in their current life knows them, knows their old friends. And it's sad. You just lose something. I mean, my husband's born and raised in Philly. He has a crew of friends that he can get together with on an occasion. And none of my friends live like, that's just not a reality for me. I grew up in Chicago and I live in Philly. Like, I'm not going to run into people on the street and be like, we should get together, the old high school crew. Like, I just don't have that as an option. And I think that his Italian grandmother always says the biscuit goes to the mouth that can't chew it. And in that, I want I want a circle of friends that can help with the shared task of finding reasons to get together. But the cookie didn't crumble that way for me. I have a bunch of different friends. Two of my best friends have never met, and they're both here in Philly. Like, it's just kind of a crazy thing.
You got to get them together.
Well, for my book release party, they're finally going to meet. I'm really excited.
Oh my gosh, I'm so excited for them to meet. Yeah, I think a lot of people feel the way you feel. I loved seeing it in print and reading it. Maybe it hit me different that way because I think your experience is one I've definitely heard from other people, right? It's just not mine.
Yeah.
And I love maybe that's it. Like, I love the possibility of bringing those people together. I talk about friends with other friends. I'm not saying gossip, but like I'll share a win. I mean, it is gossip technically. Technically, that is gossip. Gossip's a neutral term.
Gossip
people.
can be good.
Yeah, gossip can be good. But I'll share like a very public win that a friend had with another friend and almost, try and get them to like know this other character in my story. And then there's this opportunity where you get to meet, or they get to meet, and you like watch them know these things about each other because I've been talking about both of them. Like, I just think it's such a fun possibility, but I get that not everyone feels that way. So me reading that, I was just like, wow, this is hitting me really hard that people feel overwhelmed.
Totally overwhelmed. We have so much care. We have deep care for all these people that are spread out that we don't know when we're going to see next. It's just a really strange feeling. It's a strange, quintessentially modern feeling.
I have this very vivid moment that I will never forget for the rest of my life. I think I've talked about this before, but a few years ago, we had a bunch of friends, and by a bunch, I mean like 10 friends, move away in a 6-month period. And I was very, very sad that they were all moving away and that it was going to change our friendships and the dynamic. And I loved the way it was, but they had goals to chase and dreams to go after. And I was happy for them for that, but I was sad. And I remember being sad for a while, for a couple months. I woke up this one day. I was standing by the window, drinking a cup of coffee, just kind of staring off into space, probably feeling sad. And I remember having this moment of, I've done it before and I can do it again. And what that meant was I have built all these great friendships. I'm so sad because they're so amazing. And I'm not losing these friendships. They're just going to feel different. I've talked about that before. But if I want friendships to feel the way they have been feeling recently, I can build connections that feel that way. I can meet new friends. I can invest in other friendships. I really do believe that you can build the friendships and community and connections and support system that you want. And I felt very empowered by that realization. That was my personal feeling. And I hope that so many other people, like a huge piece of my work is that I hope you get to have that feeling at some point, that this area of your life, your social wellness, does not feel like a big mystery anymore. It doesn't feel chaotic. It doesn't feel like something that is happening to you, but instead that you feel empowered, that you can influence this area of your life. That's my goal. But with that, I understand is also a lot of work and personal responsibility. And I have never thought about it that way. I have never considered the weight that it is because I truly find joy in it. But I am well aware that many of you out there currently, and maybe forever, don't find joy in this. But you're doing it perhaps because you feel like you need to, right? You can't go life alone. You're lonely, or you desperately need support. And it just feels like this boulder you are pushing up a hill endlessly, and you kind of hate it. So I want to acknowledge that. And that's why I'm calling this out here, because I have to thank Anna from the bottom of my heart for writing in her book this freaking honest truth. And I'm going to read it to you because I want, one, because I'm holding her book in my hands, guys. It's not technically out yet. She sent me a copy, like a hard copy. I'm holding it. So in chapter 3, page 45, she is talking about how, so often social relationships can be taken for granted. But when we do that, they can't survive because social relationships require attention. And in this world, I'm paraphrasing this, in this world that we live in, where we move from school to another school to the town we're going to live in, right? When we're mobile like this, when our lives are so fluid, we end up with these separate groups from different eras of our life. And it's on us, it's our personal responsibility to actively maintain those friendships. And she writes, "You guys, I feel so seen by these findings. It's not in your head if you've been feeling the stress of holding up your entire social network, because that's exactly what's most likely happening. Yes, we are the center of this spoke model. Yes, we have unprecedented choice and flexibility in who we associate with, but we also bear the entire weight of propping up our individual networks that often don't overlap. That means that there's no one to share the burden of making plans or finding reasons to get together. In a spoke model, the reason a friendship should persist have to come from us. We have to make the case to each other that our friendship should continue. There's no magical entity or closed community supergluing our friendships in place. We have to create meaning for them, and we have to do the hard work of renewing connection." So if you are out there feeling like Anna, I want you to know that you are not alone, that you do not have to feel the way that I feel, that you may never feel the way that I feel. Some of you also might. You might find the joy in this eventually. But if you don't, you're not alone. That's all I want you to know. You're not alone. I didn't grow up in another time, but yeah, in another time, I mean, if you talk to our grandparents and things like that,
Yes.
they can't even really fathom that because most of them have lived in the same place for a really long time.
Decades and decades. And my grandma still talked to her third grade boyfriend, and I'd be like, that's nuts. Like, but she didn't move away. She stayed in the same place. Like, why, that's just not an experience most people are going to have.
Mm-hmm.
It's like a certain kind of demographic. It's just not an experience they're likely to have.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a lot less likely for sure nowadays.
Less likely. Yeah.
We'll go with. So to close out this episode, because we could talk forever,
I know.
you're going to have to come back
Totally
on.
good.
We're going to have to come back on. There is a more language that you offer in the book, which is this term wholehearted friendship. Can you talk a little bit about what that is for anybody listening?
Yeah, that's a great question. I wanted to give language for the kind of friend you want to be to others. And wholehearted means dedicated, enthusiastic, and committed. And so wholehearted friendship is a friend who embodies those traits towards the people that they've chosen to be in their inner circle. And that was important to me because I wanted to describe what kind of friend I want to be. I want to be someone that people are really cherish and like get excited about our friendship. I wanted to close the gap between how I wanted my friends to feel and how they actually feel. And that closing the gap is wholehearted friendship, so that we love our friends, we value our friends, but do they feel loved and valued? How can we use our words, thoughts, and actions to close that gap? And that's what wholehearted friendship is. Wholehearted friendship in the book means 3 things. Friendships require desire, diligence, and delight. And I know a lot of people have like their little trio of words for like what their friendship means. And these words are all based around time, because studies show it takes 200 hours of shared activities over the course of a few weeks or months to become strangers to good friends, to best friends. So that's a lot of time. So my paradigm is based around time. Desire is who you long to spend time with. Who do you wish you were hanging out with and why? Diligence is prioritizing the people that you want to spend time with, coming up with suggestions or invitations that they can say yes to. And delight is actually enjoying the time spent together. And that's about really just bumping up your conversation skills, being a non-judgmental friend, being a good teammate, like the art of being a good teammate. And so those three things together, when you long to spend time with someone, when you prioritize spending time with them, and then you actually love the time you're spending together, that's wholehearted friendship.
I love the concept when I read it in the book because I just thought to myself, this is one of those places where it gives people some sort of structure to think about, again, what they're doing in their friendships and to really trust themselves as a friend. And when you trust yourself as a friend and that you are showing up in these ways and you're doing these things and you're committing the time and you're bringing delight and all these things, there's just so much less worry later and you'll keep showing up, which is what we need. We need people to keep showing up on a consistent basis in order to feel more connected to our friends, I think.
Yeah, I've seen a lot of different models for friendship or ingredients for friendships, but this is the only one that was based on time and how we spend our time and think about time. So that's what made this especially exciting or engaging for me, is like, this is how we run our lives. We have to plan our day. We have to pay attention to who we want to bring close and who we're moving away from.
Yeah. The overlap just never ceases to amaze me. And yeah, time is what I also felt like was missing. So many models of friendship, so much conversation around friendship is centered around, vulnerability and this idea of closeness. And I just think we can get super close to people and we can have really strong beliefs about those friendships and so many memories and so much evidence of how close we are. But there are these friendships that we feel incredibly close to that we almost have no time with anymore. And our brain has a really hard time reckoning with that, especially in a world where, again, the language is this all or nothing and we're not accounting for the time anymore. So I love that you're talking about that because I agree. I think that's the missing piece for so many people and gives so many people so much peace around their friendships. Calm. You like to talk about them being calm.
Yeah. I want to be a calmer friend. And a lot of men shy away from vulnerability. That's something that men generally tend to struggle with. So I wanted to have a paradigm that includes everyone. And then it isn't just based on vulnerability. Like you have to mine your darkest secrets for someone to really know you. It's like that might develop and maybe you need that out of that particular friendship, but I'm not leading with that. I mean, we made friends when we were in kindergarten.
Yes.
And we learned all these lessons, but we forget them. It's like friendships have to be about something. It has to be apart from the two people. You have to look at the world in a similar way and get hyped up about that and share that with each other. It's not, affection isn't enough.
Yeah.
I think that's where people get tripped up. They think, well, I really love her, but we never spend time together. And I don't know when I'm going to see her next. This friendship doesn't really feel that fun. Like, what's going on here?
I do think that affection can be enough, but I think it's so much harder because what you're saying, you have to really force yourself. It's like I haven't talked to her in so long. And well, what do I even talk about? And what are we going to do? And you're just, the willpower required when that is the only thing holding your friendship together is so much. And at a certain point, you're probably going to become exhausted.
Yeah.
That's my take on it. Can you do it? Yes. But it's so hard.
It's really hard to keep it an active friendship,
Yes.
I should say.
Yes.
To keep your friendship active, you need more than affection.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's a memorial friendship, which is great. And you love each other, but it's not as active as ones that do have that present, that do have that strong, compelling reason.
I want to note for people listening to today's episode with Anna that, again, this thing is so jam-packed. You give people, there's a whole section on maturity in friendships, which, by the way, loved. You and I could have done a whole episode just on that. You have scripts in here for how to get people to say yes more often, how to set up your ask in a better way. You have a whole chapter on being an initiator in the friendship, and so many people out there with the struggle of, feeling like you're initiated all the time and being very overwhelmed by that. You talk about that flexible mindset that we talked about earlier, You talk about how to set boundaries and say no. I mean, people, I'm not even to part 3. Like, I'm telling you, if you are listening to this podcast episode, Anna's an overachiever in the best way possible. She has given you so much information that we haven't even covered in this. We haven't even touched on. If I hadn't mentioned it like that, and we didn't even cover part 3. So everybody out there should go buy the book. It is available now.
Alex.
Put it in the show notes. One final question to close out the episode. What was your favorite part of this book to write?
Oh, I love the exercises. I had a lot of fun with them. My main directive with the book was do not be boring.
Mm-hmm. It's not boring, people.
I did not want a boring book. I always struggle sometimes with some books. Like, I want to be entertained. Let's be real. Like, you're spending $30 on this book. I want it to be something you love and like totally love the experience of reading it. The examples, I really tried to do something different with them and really walk the reader through where these conversations can take these weird left turns and just point them out to you very gently. Like, well, look how different the conversation goes when you reply with this. And then you start to see the connection between closing that gap of I want my friend to feel heard and supported and validated. Oh, I might have been using language that didn't make them feel that way. Let me try and do better. I mean, it's just like a very gentle instruction and really entertaining to read was my hope.
Well, you achieved it.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for coming on today. It was lovely having you here.
Oh my God, I had a blast. I would talk about friendship with you anytime. We would just sit and just talk forever. Could you imagine?
We'll do it again. We'll do it again soon.
Nonstop.
Yeah.
I would love to. I would love to. Thank you, Alex.
I want to thank Anna so much for coming on the podcast, for being brave enough for taking bold friend action and messaging me and saying, hey, can I come on your podcast and talk about the book? And now I have a new friend. Anna and I had such a delightful time. I am telling you wholeheartedly, if you like my platform, if you like the messages I am sharing here, go buy Anna's book. Go rent it from your library. Go request it at your library. Authors need you to do that. Go give it a read, because I think that Anna and I have a lot of overlap in the ways that we see friendship. We brought that up multiple times in today's episode. And I think it's just good to have a variety of friendship books on your shelf. I think that you'll see a lot of similar concepts, even though we use slightly different language. And that maybe some things that you've been confused by that I've said, the way she says it, will land better with you. So go buy her book. Go buy her book. Go rent her book. Go borrow her book. Go read her book with your book club. Just get modern friendship in your hands, in your ears. Okay? Okay, thanks. It's my recommendation from me to you, my friend. Thank you for listening to this episode of Friendship IRL. I am so honored to have these conversations with you, but don't let the chat die here. Send me a voice message. I created a special website just to chat with you. You can find it at alex.chat. You can also find me on Instagram. My handle at it's Alex Alexander, or go ahead and leave a review wherever you prefer to listen to podcasts. Now, if you want to take this conversation a step further, send this episode to a friend. Tell them you found it interesting, and use what we just talked about as a conversation starter the next time you and your friend hang out. No need for a teary goodbye. I'll be back with a new episode next week.